Hello everybody, I hope all of you are having a good day. Today I would like to make a supplementary explanation video for the analysis done on medical cost dataset as a part of placement test series for CloudML. Data source is provided by CloudML in .csv format and it has a total of 7 data columns in a range of cells, to be precise in 10338 rows. That's what we are dealing with. It contains details of people of different regions in the US medical insurance data like age, sex, BMI, children, smoker, region, and charges. And additionally columns just give me a moment please. And additionally columns like dependent flag, BMI categories are added for convenience of our analysis requirements. Firstly, the range of cells are converted into a table range. Now let's start with a total of 10 problem statements we need to solve for this data set one after the other. Let's start with question number 1. We have it over here. Give me a moment please. Yeah, the question is calculate the average, median and standard deviation of medical charges, BMI and age across the entire data set. And the relevant Excel functions are average, median and standard deviation. Firstly, I have used the average function to find out the average of medical charges or BMI or age, any of these. How did I find that out? I just changed the parameter of the average to charges when I wanted to find out the average medical charges, and the parameter to BMI when I wanted to find out the BMI, average BMI, and age, and change the parameter to age for the average function when I wanted to find out the age, average age in the data set. The same concept is followed, the same process is followed for median and standard deviation, as in I use the median functions and standard deviation functions in the Excel and I've changed the parameters to medical charges or BMI or age depending on what I want to find out. That is, if I wanted to find out the median medical charges, I use the parameter as charges in the table 1 for the median function. That's what I have done. Let's go to question number 2. Compare the average medical charges and BMI between males and average beneficiaries. Which gender has higher average costs than BMI? Relevant Excel functions are average if and pivot table. We could do it in either way. I have done it in both ways, but let me explain it through using average if. Average if, first thing you need to understand in that, in average if we have 3 parameters, which is range, criteria and average range. Average range always deals with the range for which you want the average. In this case, because we want to find out the average charges, average medical charges, the average range would be table charges. And what is the criteria? The criteria is you want to find out the average medical charges for a person who's male. So the criteria would be male. And what would be the range? Range would always be the range in which the criteria is located. In this case, because the male values are located in sex column of the table 1, range would be table 1 sex, and that's how we find out the average medical costs for the gender male. And for female, the same thing is followed for average if, just that the criteria would be changed to female. And in case of BMI, everything would remain the same, just that the average range would change to BMI in the table 1, because here we want to find out the average BMI. That's how it's done for this question. And then let's go to question number 3. What it talks about, it says analyze how smoking status influences medical costs. Calculate the average cost for smoker versus non-smokers. Relevant Excel functions are averages, pivot table and charts. Let's go we could do it in either way. I've done both ways, but let's just go with an explanation through the pivot table. Here I have substituted the smoker field into the row fields of the pivot table fields, and the charges into the values field and change the summarization to the average, because using the value field settings, because by default the summarization value is always sum, but here we want the average value, so I have changed the summarization value of the field by it to average. That's how it's done. And based on this, I have inserted a pivot chart wherein pivot column chart, 2D column chart, wherein you would have the medical charges on the basis of smoking status. Here you could see clearly that the average medical charge for someone who smokes is significantly higher than for someone who doesn't smoke. That's for our question 3. That wraps it up. Let's go to question number 4. Question number 4 is, evaluate the relationship between the number of children or dependents and the medical charges. Do beneficiaries with more dependents incur higher medical costs? How did I do that? In this case, I found out the correlation of number of dependents and average insurance charges. How did I do that? I have found out correlation needs two arrays. In this case, I have given array 1 as the number of dependents, which range from 0 to 5 in this data set, and then I have given array 2 as the average corresponding to that dependents. That is, if the number of dependents is 0, what is the average medical charges? Those are the values corresponding to that, and that is another array. And based on that, you could see that there is a weak negative correlation between the number of dependents and average insurance charges. Nonetheless, it is a correlation, which means that when the number of dependents increased, the average medical charges decreased, which you could see clearly in the line chart. And how did I got this line chart? Again, let me say it through the pivot chart pivot table way. Again, I have put the children values into the rows field of the pivot table fields, and then charges into the values field and changed it to average. And based on that, I have inserted a pivot line chart. And here you can see that as the number of, to a certain extent, when the number of dependents increased, it increased. But after a certain point, when the number of dependents increased, the average medical charge decreased. That's what happened over here. Let's go to question number 5, wherein it talks about determine which US region has the highest average medical costs in BMI. Create a pivot table and chart that summarize this data by region. How do you do that? Okay, let's go through it. First, let's use the pivot table function. How it's not a function. How did I do that? I have gone to insert tab. I have used pivot table from the table range, which is table 1, and then I have inserted a pivot table into a particular cell value. And within that, I have now in the pivot table fields, I have put region into rows and charges into values and BMI 2 in values, and change that summarization to average to both of them. And after getting this result, after doing that, we get this result, and based on that I have inserted a clustered 2D bar chart. That's what I have done. Based on this chart, it is clear that the highest average medical charges is for the southeast region, and the average BMI is highest for the southeast region too. Now let's go to question number 6, wherein we're talking about create a histogram to visualize the distribution of medical charges, identify the most common cost bracket. Relevant functions are histogram, frequency, data analysis, toolpath. We could do it in any other way. Just let me show it through the medical charges histogram. This histogram, how did I do that? I have selected the medical charges from table 1 and inserted histogram from that. How did I insert a histogram? I have selected that particular data, medical charges data from the data set, and then I have use the histogram option, which is available in the insert tab under charts. Selected histogram, here we get the histogram for that. But here I have a little problem because the bin sizes are not really that helpful over here, so it is difficult to read and not really helpful. In that case, what did I do? I used frequency function, wherein I need to give the data array and bins array. The data array is the medical charges because that's the frequency to which that's on which we want to find the frequency. So the data array would be the medical charges, and bins array is the array that I have given over here. I have started from 5,000 and 70,000 all the way to the 70,000 with a 5,000 interval. I have done it another way to wherein let me show it to you. I have seen the I've used charges into the rows and count of charges into the values, and then use the grouping option in the pivot table, and I have started from 1000 and ending at 65,000 and intervals of 5,000, which means that every bin has 5,000 values in that. Why did I use 1000 and 65,000? I have just gone with the minimum value and maximum value. Based on that, I have started with 1000 and ended at 65,000, and that's how I have done it. This could be used as an dynamic histogram too. Now let's go with question number 7, which says that classify the beneficiaries into BMI categories as underweight, normal, overweight, obese. Count how many beneficiaries fall into each category, and relevant Excel functions, countfs, VLOOKUP with range lookup. I've used countfs over here. How did I do that? Let's see. I have put underweight, normal, overweight, and obese into the BMI categories. I've just normal column, a range of columns, that's range of rows, and then I have put the criteria as lower range and upper range, and the number of insurers. Let's go to countfs function. In countfs function, you have criteria range and the criteria, and it goes on with more than one criteria. Because, for example, let's see that I have want to find out the normal categories within the data range. How would I do that? In this, you've seen the range that the BMI of someone greater than 18.5 and less than or equal to 24.9 would be someone who is in the healthy range on the BMI scale. How would I find it out? Let me show it to you for an example. Criteria range 1 is the criteria is something greater than 18.5, and where do you find this 18.5? Excuse me. Where do you find this 18.5 value in the data set? Well, in the BMI column in the table. That's where I would find it. That would be your criteria range. And is that only the criteria for us? No. Also something less than 24.9, less than or equal to 24.9 would be the criteria for that. Because the values are falling within the range, we have to make use of both greater than and less than over here. And remember that you have to use greater than or equal to within quotes with the ampersand for the criteria, for the countf to understand that the criteria is greater than or equal to certain amount. You cannot just give it directly 18.5. That would not work out over here. So remember this properly. Based on that, you could see the number of insurers, and on the percentage basis, you could see that the majority of the people in the data set we are dealing with are obese. To be precise, 53.51% approx, and the 28.40% of people were overweight, and only 16.59% fall under the normal healthy range on the BMI scale. And then let's go to question number 8. What's question number 8? Let's look into it. Use a scatter plot to analyze the correlation between BMI and medical charges. Add a trend line to the scatter plot to assess the relationship. Relevant functions, scatter plot, trend line, and correlation. Let's start with correlation, wherein you would, because I want to find the correlation between medical charges and BMI, I have used arrays of array 1 and array 2. Array 1 as table 1 charges and array 2 as BMI. You could just exchange it. It doesn't really make a difference over here. Here you could see there's a positive correlation between BMI and charges, which means that as and when the BMI increased, the medical charges increased. As and when BMI decreased, medical charges too decreased. That's what this correlation means. You could see the same reflecting in the plot over here. And how did I plot this? I've just selected BMI and medical charges from the table directly, and then using the insert tab I have used the value of scatter and just inserted this chart over here. And then based on other settings of this, I have added a trend line. That's what I have done. You cannot do this with a pivot chart because scatter plots you cannot do it directly in pivot chart without making certain adjustments, but remember that. And then question number 9 is investigate the interaction effect between smoking and region on medical charges. Which region has the highest cost for smokers? Relevant Excel functions of pivot table, slices, and averages. Let me show it to you clearly. Again, I have inserted a pivot table based on table 1, and I have put the region values into the rows, smoker values into columns, and charges values into the values, and change the summarization to the average because the default one is sum, and we would get these values. Based on these values, you could see that Southeast region has the highest average medical cost for someone who smokes, while Northeast region has highest value average medical charges for someone who doesn't smoke. You could see the same reflected in the pivot chart that I have inserted here too, wherein this blue color represents someone who doesn't smoke and this orange color represents someone who smokes. That's for question 9. I hope I have done it completely. Yeah, I did. And these are the slices. Say I have inserted a slicer too. Say I want to find out the average medical charges for someone who only smokes. If I select that, here you could see that Southeast region highest, something like that. And someone who doesn't smoke, Northeast region has the highest medical charges up here. Let's clear out these filters. And then the final one is question number 10. Develop a comprehensive dashboard that provides stakeholders with insights into medical costs, include filters for gender, smoking status, region, and BMI categories. And here, this is the dashboard that I have created. In here, you could see the total medical charges, a text box saying that it's the average medical cost analysis dashboard. And within here, you have total medical charges, total number of insurers, average medical charges, and then the average medical charges were on the basis of smoking status, and the US regional wise average medical charges and BMI, and also the average medical charges based on the smoking status per region. And then you see the average medical charges versus number of dependents line chart, and here you see the correlation between BMI and average medical charges and frequency of medical charges for the entire data set. Here, for the interaction portion, I have inserted the filters for BMI categories, region, and smoking status and sex. And here it is important to remember that you use the report connections options and connect whichever pivot tables that you have used to insert these charts. These are all pivot charts that I have used based on the pivot tables that I have created, and then I have connected these slices with the particular with these particular graphs. So for example, I want to find out the overall snapshot, that is how many insurers and what's the total medical charges and what's the average medical charges and what's the correlation with the BMI and medical charges and what's the frequency of medical charges, and all those for someone who is obese. I could just select obese, and here everything changes. what's the frequency of medical charges for someone who is obese, and what's the BMI and average medical charges correlation, and what's the medical charges based on smoking status for each region, and average medical charges and based on number of dependents for someone who is only obese, and then the US regional wise average medical charges and BMI for someone who's obese, and total number of insurers, what's the total medical charges for them, what's the average medical charges for them, and smoking status based on the medical charges based on the smoking status. All that you could do it only for obese people. If you select this obese option in the BMI categories, let's clear our filters. The same could be done for region, say northwest. See, now it reflects the values for northwest. Say you want to find out the values for only someone who smokes. You could see the values clearly over here for someone only who smokes. For someone who smokes, you could see over here the frequency of medical charges significantly increased, which might be the reason, which is the reason why you have the average medical charges, which also significantly bring increased, because majority of people fall into the higher frequency over here. Most of the people at the overall level, it's just 16,000 is the maximum range that they have used to spend on the medical charges. But for someone who smokes, you could see the medical charges bins over here. The starting itself, the most common itself is 16,000 to 21,000, and then 36,000 to 41,000. So that's it. And then average, you could based on sex, you could do it for males. Here again, you get an at a glance shot. That is the explanation video for this data set. Let me just give a quick view of the presentation that I have done for this data analysis part. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.